So with that, let me just take 2 minutes to introduce the session and myself. This session, like I said, is on branded recommerce. It's clear from the chatting before the session started that people see the value and opportunity in recommerce. We certainly do. And to us, what's most important is that this is an opportunity now more than ever to engage customers in sustainability and circularity. We've seen resale grow like crazy over the past decade. It's primarily been a result of third-party platforms like eBay, Poshmark, ThredUp, The RealReal. You know, they've made it cool to buy used products. There's no stigma around it anymore. It's more affordable and it's more sustainable, and so customers are flocking to it. But of course, brands like Peak Design that originally design, produce, sell the items the first time around are not benefiting one iota from the resale of those items because they don't even know what customers are buying their products on eBay or Poshmark, much less are they benefiting from the sale of that transaction. So the conversation today is specifically around branded recommerce. How can brands get into the recommerce or resale market? My background is that I've spent the last now 10 or 11 years focused on sustainable retailing and ethical production. I've worked with a number of the largest brands and retailers, but now building technology to help brands engage in the resale market. And I'm joined today with Peter, founder and CEO of Peak Design, of course, and also co-founder of Climate Neutral. So I'll turn it over to you, Peter, to introduce yourself a bit
Sure. More. Yeah, well, not much more to say. Peak Design has been going in the photographic accessory space for about 10 years, but we've really branched over into sort of a modern, somewhat tech-forward customer with our bags and backpacks, and then our travel gear. It's certainly been interesting managing a company that makes its bread and butter from commuting gear and travel gear during the pandemic, but we've actually fared fairly well. And I think that's because we've employed a lot of tactics throughout the years that are sort of on the cutting edge of retail and of how we interact with our customers. And it provides a buffer in these really tough times. And I think Recurate is another great example of a tool in the kit that's going to help us just kind of spread out the risk and be one more sort of arrow in the quiver. So Peak Design has been an absolute joy to run. I'll also mention that in 2018, I co-founded an organization called Climate Neutral. And the long story short there is I got curious about Peak Design's carbon footprint one day. We looked it up at great cost us about $40,000 to ascertain, which is absurd, especially considering it only cost $65,000 that year to eradicate the entirety of it with carbon offsets. And that sort of induced a very hard look into the idea of carbon offsets, the existing voluntary market for carbon offsets, which are now being rebranded as carbon removals, which is fine. But what we did is created a label called Certified Climate Neutral that is quickly becoming the de facto organization for whole entity carbon neutrality. There are people making net zero claims to do it by a certain year. There are people who have been previously claimed carbon neutrality for just offsetting a portion of their carbon footprint. And we are the organization that says, did you accurately measure the entirety of your carbon footprint? And then did you buy qualified offsets for the whole thing? I'd say I'm equally proud of both of these organizations, Peak Design and Climate Neutral, and thrilled to be talking to you here today.
Great. Well, thank you, Peter. I'm excited for this conversation as well. So I'm noticing a ton of new folks enter, which means that you didn't hear my spiel from the beginning. I will summarize with one line. If you have questions, comments, ideas, or thoughts, or links, or anything else, feel free to add it to the chat. I'll be monitoring it throughout the course of the conversation. So Peter, one of the things that really excites me about your brand, Peak, is just the mission. Would you mind just telling us a little bit more about, what inspires you, what gets you excited, and what drives you to do what you do with Peak.
Well, funny enough, the mission of Peak Design, I'll start with the purpose, because we kind of have a preamble to our mission, which is our purpose. And the purpose of Peak Design is for the employees of Peak Design to live happy lives. That's it. It's not about our customers. It's not about, it's not about the world. It's about what probably on the surface might sound like a fairly selfish intention, but it is fueled by when I really dug deep into, why did I start this company? It's because I was a construction engineer and I liked my job, but I didn't love it, and I didn't love my future with it necessarily. And I am a believer that we've got one life to live, and for better or for worse, many of us spend much of that time working, and I want work to enable a full and rich life, not just for myself, but for all the employees of Peak Design. So that's why we exist, is so that we can have good lives and be happy. Importantly, we've come together and decided on a set of principles that make Peak Design employees happy. And one of those things is making the best things. And this is, I think, important in order to attract and retain the very top talent that we have in the designing and engineering and really other spaces of the company as well. These are people who want to achieve great things. And so certainly part of the mission is in making people happy is making the best thing. Another thing is to succeed at the expense of nobody, because while we may be 40 people in San Francisco and elsewhere, we're of course aware that the vast majority of people working for Peak Design are contractors in Vietnam and China who are building our products every day. We're 40, they're over 1,000 every day. And so if we don't care about their happiness and their fulfillment, that sets up a strong hypocrisy. And so we're making sure that we succeed at the expense of nobody in that regard. I should also mention that we have 17 people now full-time in the Philippines who are doing customer service, and of course these values extend to them as well. Not just customer service, wholesale operations, back-end computer engineering, a lot of stuff. I appreciate that we're getting a little bit long-winded here, but going through the rest, treating our customers as peers, which means that we are very upfront and very honest with our customers. Having that authenticity and that honesty is critical to our brand for offset our environmental impact. We know that you don't get to make things in this world. You don't get to be a member of society without acknowledging an environmental impact. And while we have decided as a world to take natural resources and transform them with energy into usable products for us, if you're not making efforts to undo the negative consequences of that, you're simply pulling from the bank, and you're never putting anything into it. Number 5 is to use our voice for positive change. We acknowledge that we do have an increasing megaphone, and that the issues in the world, believe it or not, extend beyond camera accessories. And we care about them very much, and we feel it our responsibility to use that platform well. And the last one is to pursue happiness over growth. And that's to make sure that we don't chase Silicon Valley dreams of, getting huge and getting massive, and that we actually prioritize the happiness and contentedness of our employees. So there you have it.
I love it. It's awesome. There's certainly an opportunity to have a whole session or set of sessions on how your purpose and mission play out, what they actually look like in practice, and how it results in outcomes, important outcomes, both business outcomes as well as, what you described, happiness outcomes for your employees, customers, et cetera. That will be the subject of a different session. But I think what was important from that is just understanding how Peak thinks about the world, how Peter thinks about the world, how Peak Design thinks about the world, because of course, branded recommerce helps with an element or several elements of the mission that you just laid out. So I feel like that was very good background and context. So of course, as part of the mission, you mentioned customers. Interestingly, you put employees first, but you do describe customers as being peers. That I think is interesting. But Peak is also very unique in that you're a very customer and community-driven brand. In fact, the genesis was from community with crowdfunding, the initial campaign. And so now, if you don't mind drilling in a little bit more on how you think about community and what that actually looks like in practice with regard to the Peak Design community.
Mm-hmm. Well, the way that I describe it, obviously Kickstarter is at the very heart of kind of the business philosophy that we put forth. And it's just, but when you use Kickstarter, it's simply different than a transaction because the customer is placing a little bit of a bet. They're placing some faith in you. They're obviously getting a product somewhere down the road, hopefully for a little bit cheaper than it will cost. But they also get to participate in the, kind of the final over the line design decisions, which always end up being really crucial. And they get to interact with the company along the way. And we're very much, there and present and forward and making ourselves available during these campaigns. So I think that's how we can credibly say that we sort of join our community in bringing all these products forth. And then, another aspect is just whether it be trade shows or seeing Peak Design gear on the street, I myself and other Peak Design employees always make it a point to go over and say, hey, how do you like your bag? How do you like your capture camera clip? And obviously these are micro interactions. We sell 1 million products throughout the year, but somehow these values sort of carry through, and there is an authenticity that I think customers innately understand with our brand, and that's reflected every time I talk to people in the wild.
Great. And as we hone in on the conversation specifically around resale and why Peak Design should offer product resale to their customers, of course, community is one major element. We need to understand our customers and our customers' behaviors. The other critical ingredient for this is high quality products. And so, Peter, take a couple of minutes to tell us what you think about with regard to the production, the design and production of your product.
Sure.
What goes into that, and how do you think about quality, longevity, etc.?
It started with the first product, which is called the Capture Camera Clip. It's this metal clip that clamps onto a backpack strap and lets you hold the camera rigidly, hands-free, if you're hiking or traveling or walking around. And that thing was made out of 5 primary die-cast aluminum parts. It was just a bomb, right? It wasn't going to break. And so this was my first product. I didn't study any of this stuff. I was just like, well, yeah, of course it's going to have a lifetime warranty. And, most of it was like, this thing isn't going to break. Of course, I did a marginal job designing that product in that, screws would come loose and people would lose things here and there. But we always just took care of our customers, in a way that it almost has made every negative customer interaction that people have had, whether they've lost a screw or a part is broken or something like that, it has flipped into a positive because we're so obviously we are going to fix that for you. And also here's 25% off your next order. Sorry for the troubles. And people just feel heard. They feel like they're oh my God, this, it truly gives security that when people are buying a product from us, and they don't even have to buy it from us, it just has to be a Peak Design product, that it is an asset. It is not an expense that carries no value once you open it from the package. It carries the same value, slightly depreciating over time. But having built that first product and instituted a lifetime warranty, it made sense for us to essentially carry that through to every product that we've ever made. And so even now our cell phone cases, which are getting near to completion, these will have a lifetime warranty. This is something that is, massaged 1,000 times a day, unfortunately. And we're going to stand by it, So your $40 phone case is something that you can think of as an asset, and you will be able to resell when you're ready to upgrade to your next phone. Nothing could be more critical for having a product that has a long life, especially when it's mated to another product that you inherently upgrade every 2 years or so. So Recurate's a big part of our plans moving forward.
That's great. Well, Mark, I see in the chat you had a brilliant idea, and we are getting there in a minute. Why not let customers sell their used Peak Design goods on your website? That's a great idea. And so I think, what do you think, Peter? Should we consider that as an option?
That feels like a plant. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
I can't say I know Mark, but Mark, you did a great job segueing. Thank you. So Peter, we of course talked about your customers, community. We talked about your products, longevity, and your lifetime warranty. To me, when you put those things together, one of the outcomes is exactly what Mark just said. Products last forever. Customers might want to move on, but the product is still good. And so, the items have resale value. Like what you just said, Peter, they're an investment. And if the first customer no longer wants it or needs it, it's perfectly good for a second customer or a third or fourth or fifth. So, Peter, with that, tell us what you're thinking. Kind of lay out the vision for what branded resale looks like for you.
The vision, it's funny, the vision, your partner, Wilson, who came from Gap and the sustainability department there, I was talking to him about trying to get Gap to join climate neutral, to offset their whole footprint. That didn't take, not yet at least. But we talked about another idea, and it seemed like we were kind of having the idea concurrently. I wanted, certainly I was familiar with REI's basement and Patagonia worn wear, but I had an aversion to this intermediate step where a customer has to send their gear into like the third party warehouse and then inspect it, and then it gets sent out again. Why? Right? We all have cell phone cameras. We all have the ability to show what a product is. Why can't there be just a peer-to-peer option for people who want to sell Peak Design gear and then upgrade it? And this comes from a place of, when I shop, I am typically looking for something used first. I just am. It's thriftier. It keeps one less, product from being made in the world. It's just a more accurate depiction of the actual demand for a product. And so it really comes from me as a customer. I would want that experience. I would want the option to pay a little less and get something used. And I know that I'm not alone in that. Obviously, eBay and Poshmark and all this stuff, we're not alone in that. But people are also, I don't know if lazy is the right term, or whether it's like, I just can't be bothered because there's so many things to do in this world and people are busy. Let's call it busy. Give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm a busy guy as well. And I'll only do something if it can be as little friction as possible, And I am very optimistic. When I was chatting with Wilson about this idea about people being able to go to the Peak Design site and having there's the new price. I can pay $200 for this backpack new, or I can pay $160 used. Interesting. If I could see the condition of that and thought that it was good enough for me, that'd probably be something I would go for. And remarkably, it would seem like Wilson had a very, very similar idea. And I don't recall where it was working with you, Adam. It's almost like you are simultaneously having this idea as well and working on it, trying to build a platform so that this thing could be not just for Peak Design, but rather scale to any business that wants to very sensibly do peer-to-peer sales on their website. So that's how we got here.
Great. Well, I don't intend for this to be a conversation specifically about Recurate, but I will just say for a minute, for anyone who's interested in what we actually do, Recurate is a Shopify app. It's an integration for any brand that uses Shopify to create a peer-to-peer resale marketplace directly on their site. The intention is to make it super easy for sellers, to Peter's point of reducing friction in every step of the process, and also make it super easy for buyers. So as a buyer, we've done a lot of research, and it's no surprise they want to see high quality brand images first so that they know what the thing looks like and how they can use the gear. But they also want to see the specific images of the item that they are going to buy, the used item that they're going to buy. So we're working with Peak to make that really easy, as well as a number of other brands. But the great thing about Peter and Peak is that they've been a leader from the beginning. And even though, Peter, you and I were saying before this call that we see 2021 as the year of branded resale, there will certainly be a lot of brand announcements over the course of this year. Peak Design will certainly be one of the first, and also one of the most comprehensive. The element of the vision that I especially like that you just laid out, Peter, that so far is unique to you, doesn't exist with Patagonia or REI or any of the other brands that currently do have branded Recommerce, is the buy used button directly next to the buy new button. I love that. And that's going to be a great way to bring more customers into the used product space. Absolutely. It looked like you had a thought for a minute. Was there anything you wanted to add to that?
I had a thought of like, oh, wow, it's good to see my neighbor who just got back from 30 days in Colorado and showed up on my deck. That was my thought.
All right. Does he want to join us as well?
He's a pretty sharp dude, actually. It might be wise, but maybe we'll leave him out of it this time.
Well, Mark, I'm excited to see that you have the backpack. Is that the Everyday Messenger? It's a great bag if you do. So Deborah, you mentioned peer-to-peer. You love the peer-to-peer focus. So Peter, let's dive into peer-to-peer for a second, because you compared that as a major point of difference to Patagonia and REI, where they collect all of the items and then resell them, whereas what you're thinking is peer-to-peer. Of course, that goes back to the community that you've built, the amazing customer community, and I think peer-to-peer leverages that community. But tell us a little more about why you are interested in peer-to-peer specifically.
Efficiency. I just like for me, it's like to have an extra shipment. It is a cost every time that it's not just the shipping, it's the handling and it's the unboxing and it's the throwing away of another box and the retaping of a new one. It's like, that is not a small interaction, and if we need interactions to be reduced on the scale of billions. And so if we truly want used gear to be an important part of moving forward as a society, that means interactions are happening in the billions. And if you deliberately include that one extra step, I think it's just you're starting with the wrong vision. The fact of the matter is that 98% of the time, people are going to accurately represent their products. And in the event that they haven't done so, you've eliminated the risk. The platform, Recurate, and any sensible platform that comes forth in this space is obviously going to hold the payment until the person on the other side verifies that it's happened. And Peak Design gets to act as that broker, right? We are the broker of trust, which makes that interaction happen between buyer and seller. But we don't have to physically receive it to do that. The person who's receiving it can do it. So it's purely efficiency, operational efficiency.
It's great. Yeah, we've, no surprise, talked with a number of brands who are interested in Recommerce in one form or another. And I definitely see there to be two categories of thought with brands in that space. One is the type of brand that wants to control everything. And of course, there's a huge cost to that. And also the potential to lose people, because people like to be a part of the community. They like to participate, to your point earlier. And then, of course, the other category of brands that think peer-to-peer is actually a great alternative. They see already that behavior in the marketplace. If you're buying something on eBay, you're buying it directly from a customer, prior customer. So peer-to-peer already does exist. So, Peter, what experience have you had so far? We obviously have not launched your branded resale marketplace yet, but you still do have experience with resale. So tell us about the experience that you've had so far.
You're referring more to like with eBay and
with eBay.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
eBay's a great place for us to use as sort of a separate channel for items that show back at our returns warehouse. We brought in a great company out of Chicago called RMI, Returns Management Incorporated, and they just do an excellent job at warehousing and re-preparing our products to either enter the fully packaged and ready to go stream, or more like the eBay stream, which is there's either damage to the packaging or we just can't resell it as new. And I would recommend for every brand that has, we're very lucky, I think, that our return rate is under 1%, which is just fantastic for selling 1 million products a year. But
some brands are 30% or more, especially e-com.
I know
1% is incredible.
It is pretty wild, and I mean, obviously, we don't have fit is not an issue. I mean, with the bags, it is to some degree, but not like it is with clothing. But the products are great. I think that's why people don't return them. But even so, you're going to have things show up, and eBay it's a fine resource for selling that type of gear. And we don't want to. We kind of want to keep that separate from our website. I don't desire to have like the unboxed experience over there, because eBay easily like handles that amount of demand. I am excited though for the peer-to-peer aspect to show up, and it hasn't been experienced about yet, but we have asked our customers, what do you think about this? How excited are you for it? And fully 76% of our customers say that they're interested either in buying used gear on Peak Design or in selling used gear on Peak Design. Only 10% currently have ever bought or sold used gear, used Peak Design gear. So there exists a huge delta there. And my hunch is that the 66% that make up that difference are impacted by matters of convenience or lack thereof. That's probably their primary rationale for not buying used. So, I'm excited to. I'm sure you have another question about this, because if brands are out there, they're gonna say like, well, am I gonna lose revenue because I'm not selling a new product? And first off, by offering the 100% option, we give people, imagine a product at retail costs $200 and the used price is $160. The seller will get 100% of that credit if they buy Peak Design credit. And if they don't want Peak Design credit, then they get 75% of that sale in straight cash. So that means that Peak Design keeps the 25% cash right there. And I'm very comfortable with that ratio. Time is going to tell, whether we're actually from this upfront or whether it's more of a brand building mechanism. And the thing is, we get to play with those dials of how much we end up taking in. to balance it so that our needs are met as a brand and as a retailer.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. So there were a number of points there, and I'd love to drill in on a few of them. So the percentage of your customers that are interested in resale, either selling or buying, you said that's 76%, which is incredible. I mean, that's just a stone's throw from 100%. So, I can't imagine there are many activities that a brand can do that would garner that much interest from customers. So I do want to spend a minute just diving into that. Let's go swimming in that statistic. One, you don't have branded recommerce on your website yet. So how did you get that number? Where did that come from? What can we compare it against? Like, what other sorts of brand activities have you seen have had that level of interest amongst your customers?
Well, yeah, we got the information from simply asking. We send out an annual survey each year, and I forget how many tens of thousands of people take a half-hour-long survey and do so with glee. Half the reason they do it, I think, is because our head of marketing, Adam, who writes it, like, it is a joy to take this service. You will laugh out loud multiple times, and I mean that is just incredibly valuable to the brand. But we get incredible data coming back as a result, and it always seems to be reflective of even though it's just a cross section of our customers, it's quite reflective of the broader group. But to your question about like what else are they that excited about? I don't know, tripods, that we might make a new tripod. But put it this way, it's just so definitively telling that people are interested in this, that it puts it in the category of no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I know, of course, that's not the sole reason why you wanted to engage in resale directly on your website, but certainly customer interest is a major element of making that decision.
It's kind of like I thought this was a good idea before we asked the customers. And if customers didn't think it was a good idea, I would still be tempted to try it out. But it sure is nice having them corroborate that they're into it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. The other element, just it's obvious, but maybe still worth saying, is that whether or not Peak Design is engaging in branded resale, whether or not customers can buy and sell used items directly on your website, customers are still doing it. They're just not doing it on your site. They go to eBay, they go to used gear sites, sporting goods, used sporting goods sites. You'll see Peaks splattered all throughout the internet. But of course, in those cases, you don't even know who your customer is because they're buying it through that third-party site. You're not benefiting from the transaction. You don't get to build a relationship with the customer.
Totally.
Unless they register the product. You'll never know them.
And obviously, it's increasingly important to get that email address of that person. The average Peak Design customer, at least the one who responds to our survey, owns 7 Peak Design products. It's unbelievable, the long-term value of these customers.
Yeah.
But the other aspect is that it is not a clean or happy or friendly experience to buy used gear on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. I have been scammed. I've probably been scammed and lost as much money as I've saved over the years. And, I think that people do have some questions, Adam, about that security aspect. And I think you're better equipped to talk about that than I am. I don't know if now when you want to get into it.
Yeah. It's a great segue because I am seeing some questions on the side and I would love to start answering some of them. First, I will say, with regard to the experience that we are building for Peak, it's tested now. We're working with a number of other brands, albeit a good bit smaller than Peak Design. We've had hundreds of listings, hundreds of transactions, thousands of dollars worth of sales. And, you'll be happy to know that sellers take their role very seriously. We give them 3 days to ship the item after it's sold. And it's very rare that they go beyond that 3-day window before shipping. And it was usually because of the holidays. And then, we have actually never had an issue with the quality of an item. So once the item is delivered, we ask the buyer to confirm the condition of the item and make sure that it was the same condition as advertised. And there's never been an issue with that. So, sellers take their role very seriously. Buyers, of course, do as well. Sandy, you asked a question about who manages customer service. And I think, every brand will need to decide that for themselves. From what we've found, there's, the standard questions that you get with any e-commerce transaction, which is, when is my item going to arrive? Can you share the shipping or tracking number? Those sorts of things. So, most brands are pretty well equipped to answer those questions already. But the new set of customer service questions that we see, not that frequently, but because the experience is very self-explanatory and pretty clear, but is around selling. What is it okay to take pictures of X, Y, and Z, or it's a brand new item, but it doesn't have tags. Can I list it as new with tags? So those sorts of questions. And for the most part, you develop a good FAQ and template customer service responses, and you'll be able to answer most sellers' questions pretty easily. There's a few other questions that I'll just go ahead and answer myself or pose to you, Peter.
Sure.
Who gets the resale price? Beth asked. Is it the seller or the brand? Everywhere is different, but in the case of Recurate with Peak Design, we are recommending a price, and we recommend a price based on the age of the item, the original price of the item, and the condition of the item. And to your point, Peter, there is serious friction around deciding a price when you're going to third-party websites where there's no guidance whatsoever. I have this Everyday Messenger Peak Design bag. I want to sell it. Should I sell it for $100? Should I sell it for $200? There's no guidance whatsoever. And so, people get nervous that they're pricing it too low and they're not making as much as they could, or they get nervous that they're pricing it too high and it's not going to sell. So we'll make a recommendation, but just like any other resale site, it's the seller's product. They get to choose the price of the item. And, if they don't want to part ways from that item for less than $200, they'll list it for $200. And if someone buys it for that price, great. Mm-hmm. Then Mark, you asked Peter, how did you get to the 25% commission? Why don't you answer that?
Like so many of our pricing decisions, it's actually very feel-based. It feels like a significant enough amount where people are going to be convinced to probably go for the store credit option, which is really what we would prefer. But also 25% is significant enough where we're happy with that revenue for the work that we did on that. So it's quite feel-based, and it could adjust in time as we get. We'll see. Zach's question, as far as do we see this more surprise and delight for folks who are already there, or are we reaching out? It's a great, inevitably we're going to have both. It is going to surprise and delight people who are on the website, and there's going to be some learning, as people encounter this option that they're just not used to seeing on websites. Now, do keep in mind that we're doing this as almost like a mirror site. So I can't remember the specific URL that we're going with. It's
Market
Trader Pete's as
market.peakdesign.com.
Peakdesign.com. That's correct. And so it's not like they'll see them side by side, but we will have the ability to govern how much traffic we put over there by how prominent we're like, are you sure you don't want this to be a used piece of gear? Go on over to the marketplace, right? We can really toggle that message up and down. And we'll have to determine a balance. And that kind of goes into the next question that Linda asked about cannibalization. I don't know. We don't know how much cannibalization will be there. There is a world in which it could be too much. I just don't think so, though, because I think that a lot of people own older Peak Design gear and are more interested in upgrading to the newest and the latest, greatest. But it's also decently expensive gear. So I think there's a good number of like aspirational shoppers who probably, consider out of reach a number of our products, but used, or the older ones, they should be able to more readily afford. And so I'm not so much asking myself, how is this going to shake out on the bottom line, like in the very near term? It's how good is this for the customer? How good is this for the brand over time? How much extra confidence are people going to have in shopping Peak Design as a result of knowing that their purchase can once again be either converted into the upgraded product or cold hard cash?
Loyalty to the brand.
Yeah, we care about those things tremendously. And I just don't think that there's going to be some catastrophic amount of cannibalization.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because not surprisingly, I, as Recurate, has talked to tons of brands. I mean, probably on the order of 100, 150 brands by this point. And I could count on less than one hand the number of times people have asked about cannibalization. It's very rare that seems to be on brands' minds. And I think, though I haven't probed into it, I think the reason is because brands see that their stuff is being sold on third-party sites. If it's apparel, then Poshmark and ThredUp and fashion on the RealReal, they're seeing that it's already happening. And so the question is less about, will I cannibalize the business for my new products if I bring Recommerce back onto my website? The question more so is, do I prefer that the customer come to my website, or do I prefer the customer goes to some third-party site when they want to buy used? So said another way, it might be two different customers. The customer, like what you were saying, Peter, that always first thinks, can I buy this used? In which case they're first going to eBay, or they're first going to Facebook Marketplace. They're not going to peakdesign.com, versus the other customer that's thinking, I want a Peak Design item, and goes directly to peakdesign.com first. So I think the better framing, or the alternative framing, at least for thinking about cannibalization, is more so just, do you want to attract that set of customers that thinks used first, or are you okay continuing to send them to a third-party site?
For sure.
All right, I'm seeing a number of other questions come in. So before I get to any of this, I'll just reiterate for those of you who still have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or links, or whatever else you want to share for the group. I'm sure we're not going to get to all of them, especially since we only have a few more minutes left here. But Jeremy, I see your questions at the bottom, so let me ask these. How does the brand get customer information? So Peter, I'll ask this of you. How does the brand get customer information, and how much customer information do they get? You added this additional context, Jeremy. It's a great way to groom future customers who perhaps cannot afford to buy new today, but might want to in the future. I think that's awesome. That's really well said. So, there might be a customer, Peter, that is currently going to eBay because they cannot afford to buy new gear from you. But as they get older, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they might be able to afford it. And you would prefer to know who they are than for them to be hanging out in the ether, unbeknownst to you. So tell us, how do you think about, grabbing that customer through Recommerce or Resale first, and then kind of grooming that customer over time?
Sure. Well, they essentially, they have to be registered as users on our website. They have to have an account with Peak Design, and then it's the standard information that we collect there, which is name, email. We ask if people are interested in giving us their phone number so that we can text them when there's a Black Friday sale, essentially. And that's it. I think shipping information if they've received something from us before, but just enough to complete the transaction. And then again, on the security piece, it's that their store credit or the PayPal transfer of cash goes into their account once the receiver of the item says, yes, this is indeed what I was expecting.
Yeah. So the buyer is going through the exact same checkout process for buying a used item as they are for buying a new item. So it captures the same information as if this were a new customer buying a new item.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And Sandy, you had a really good point earlier that I think is worth everyone considering, which is that if you were a first-time buyer, you would find that this service on a brand site would help confirm your decision to buy a brand new item. Mm-hmm. So let me just play this out, and then Peter, I'm interested in your reaction to this. What you're saying, Sandy, is that if you're buying something new from a brand's website, and it's the first time you've bought from this brand, maybe you're still testing them out. If you're on their site and you see a whole vibrant resale marketplace directly on their site, your thinking goes, well, this looks like an investment piece because yes, I might be buying it for $200, but it looks like it'll be pretty easy to resell directly on their website for $160 in a couple of years. Mm-hmm. So maybe the cost calculus totally changes for you, but if nothing else, it's clear that this is an investment piece. Peter, I'm interested in your reaction to that.
I mean, I think you lay it out there perfectly, and I think that thinking becomes all the more important the more expensive your item is. And we do make a tripod that's $600, and we'll have more expensive tripods in the future. And racing that barrier, either lowering the barrier to entry with the used product itself, or building that confidence, is obviously going to help. It's going to help with conversion. No way it will.
Yeah. That's awesome. So we only have a few more minutes left, Peter, and I want to give you time to kind of paint the broader vision. Where do you see this going? What are your longer term goals for this program? And I'll also just add part in my mind how, if I try to put myself in the shoes of Peter Daring, part of your goals as a leader, a brand leader, is inspiring others to do the same. So, give us a sense of where you see this going. What's your broader vision?
I think that this can and should become table stakes, right? Table stakes, the minimum bet that you need to enter the game. Currently, what is table stakes for a brand is that they have a website and that you can buy products from them, and that they'll ship in a reasonable amount of time. That's the level of table stakes that we have right now. I think that the ability to buy branded used content is going to become absolutely the norm. And I don't know how many years it will take for that to happen, but I think it's absolutely going to become the norm. And especially when you establish the trust involved in the peer-to-peer aspect, you eliminate the friction, the operational friction for the brand in particular of setting up that third-party warehouse that can go through and manage that extra shipping and handling. It's just so easy to plug in to a website. And there are other things that I hope that are going to become table stakes. And one of those is that a brand pays for its carbon emissions. The notion that any brand can walk around wearing a hat that says, I'm a responsible business owner, without taking care of their carbon problem is ludicrous to me at this point. It is simply ludicrous. Like, you have the knowledge now, you understand that carbon is an issue, you understand that it can be readily measured, easily estimated, and you understand that it is possible to buy carbon removals, pay someone else to extract an equivalent amount of carbon from the air. And the idea, like, I think that it won't take us that long before it was going to be, it will seem absurd that you would operate a business with a straight face and not take care of the carbon that you put up into the air. And that's the mission of Climate Neutral. So I would like to think that all of these trends, because they're just really sensible, are things that businesses are going to follow. And 2021 is going to be a hell of a move that direction.
Well, thank you. Before this call, just to finish that thought, before this call, we were saying that Peter saw 2020 as the year of carbon neutrality commitments. And that's incredible. I mean, certainly there's so much more work that needs to be done. And if you work for a brand that cares about the environment, cares about sustainability, then that's one of the easiest ways to engage in a meaningful way. And so I definitely encourage you to check out Climate Neutral. And also, from what I've seen of recent brand announcements, plus the number of brands that we will be launching with in the next 3 months or so with a branded Recommerce effort, I definitely see 2021 as the year of branded Recommerce. This is the year that's going to start the mainstreaming of brands owning their resale market. So with that, Peter, thank you so much. Awesome guy, awesome brand. For those of you who are on this, who don't yet have Peak Design equipment, go out and get it. Go to their site or wait a month or so and you can buy it used directly on their site. Thank you, Peter. This was great. I appreciate your time.
I enjoyed it too, Adam. Thank you. Thank you very much. You led a great session. It's an awesome topic. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
All right. Well, take care, everyone. And thanks for the great questioning as well.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.